everybody, and welcome back to A Catholic's Perspective, the podcast all about being a young Catholic surviving in a secular world. I wanted to come on here and do this podcast today. This is unlike any other topic we've really covered before, and because today, actually, when we're recording this, it's Infant Loss and Remembrance Day, I think this is a really important topic that needs to be discussed more openly, and this topic is really important, I think, for the purpose of healing for those who have gone through a tragic loss of a child. But also, this topic is really important for those who haven't experienced this type of loss, but maybe know somebody who has and they want to help support them properly. So, in order to talk about this topic, I've brought on Nicole LeBlanc to discuss her own personal experience with this. So, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think, we've been trying to do this podcast for a little while now when we first connected over Twitter. And when I first heard about, your babies, Maria Therese and Rachel Clare, they are just so precious. And I first heard about this back about a year ago, when you first announced, your little saints in heaven. And it just really intrigued me. And, you have such a beautiful soul and to talk about this and to open it up to other people to discuss. So, would you like to kind of do a little intro for the listeners who might not know you all that well?
Yeah, so my name is Nicole. I've been married since August 20th, 2021. And Austin, my husband, is a convert. And so that's awesome. We live in Michigan, in the Beach and Detroit area. We go to traditional Latin Mass. I have Latina heritage, so I can speak both English and Spanish. And together we own a small business. It's just an automotive car part. My dad passed away some years ago, so we just took that over and we're redoing what he did, starting from the ground up. And so we've been doing that for the past 4 years, and it's been going really well.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's fantastic. And you said your husband's a convert. What did he convert from?
He just believed in God, and that was it. So it was pretty easy to convert him.
It's just oh, same. Here we go.
Yeah,
It's a little more structure.
Right. Yeah, he
No,
fell
that's
in love with
amazing.
Catholicism, so that was at first he did it for me, but then it was he truly learned about Catholicism, and he's like, "I can't imagine myself being anything else."
No, that's beautiful. That's how the
Mhm.
best marriages kind of
Right.
happen, you know?
Yeah.
There's a lot of graces that come from that.
Mhm.
How did you guys meet?
So we met, I was 19 and he was 20. We worked, at a restaurant near our house, and we lived, 2 minutes away from each other after we started dating, but we met at this restaurant, and I was a waitress, he was a busboy, and we just started talking little by little and started dating immediately after I started working there, so we've been inseparable, gosh, ever since September 2018.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So you guys
Yeah.
just had your wedding anniversary a couple months ago or
Yeah.
last month. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I feel like, especially when it comes to marriage, there are so many graces that you receive through it. And being able to have a rock with you when going through something that's really tragic, I feel like is so, so helpful.
Mhm.
Did you kind of want to get into how that all kind of started?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, we knew from the very beginning we wanted to be parents. We wanted to raise up a lot of children for a little army for God and have the church militant here on earth. So, at first, we still had a lot to learn about our faith together. I was always cradle Catholic, but we started going to the traditional Latin Mass, and that kind of just changed everything about how we saw our faith and took it more seriously. So, at first, we were kind of doing NFP just because our situation was kind of difficult. We were still living in my father in law's basement at the time. And so we just kind of looked at it from a perspective. It was still COVID time. So things were still shifting and what are we going to do? And so even despite that, we were like, I don't care if we need to bring a baby into a basement or wherever, our Lord was born in a manger. So it's
True.
possible. So let's just put all of our financials aside and we're just going to trust in God completely. So from January 2022, that's when we officially started trying to conceive and just let God be in control of everything. And it took us a while. It took us until October to finally get the first positive pregnancy test. October 26, 2022. So it was
Okay,
like,
so a little bit.
yeah, it took us a while after like 6 months, because we were both 22 at the time. So we're like, I can't believe it's been more than 6 months. Like, I don't know what's going on. And I know people struggle with, infertility. So I know in the grand scheme of things, it's not really that long, but I didn't know any better. We went to doctor's appointments and like, yeah, and everything's fine. And just be patient. I'm like, all right, whatever. So yeah, until October. So 10 months, I was crying a lot, and I was just so happy our prayers were finally answered. But oh my gosh, it's coming on to like a 2-year anniversary now pretty soon of that first positive pregnancy test. And yeah, I'll never forget it. We were just so happy and so excited. You start thinking about all the possibilities. This is a boy or a girl. We had chose names the very next day after we found out, like, okay, if this is a boy, it's this name, and if it's a girl, it's this name. And we were just so excited, until I got really sick. I got, the worst kind of, morning sickness you could possibly think
Oh,
of.
no.
It was so rough, and, I had told my mom, I was like, "What if it's twins? Like, what if I have twins?" She's like, "No, stop, like, don't talk like that." And, she was actually going on a trip to Lourdes, during that time. So she was away from when I was 6, 7 weeks to 8 weeks. She was gone during my very, very early pregnancy. So I remember she was FaceTiming me, and she's at the grotto at Lourdes, and I'm crying because Saint Bernadette is my saint. And for some reason, I just felt so compelled. I was like, please help my baby, save my baby. I don't know why I thought that. Usually, like now I'm thinking, oh, praise you, Jesus, for this gift of life. But my first instinct was help. It was just a
Mm,
cry for help. So I knew from the very beginning that something was wrong. I just didn't know because I was never pregnant before. Something was really wrong. So we went to our 7-week confirmation ultrasound of the pregnancy, and it was at a Christian, facility because that's what we had chosen. I would have done things so differently. Like, I wanted to have a home birth. I wanted to do all these things, no intervention, no medicine. That's what we decided what we're gonna do.
right.
And, we go in for that first 7-week ultrasound, and the lady she was a doctor. She was doing the ultrasound, and she was like, "I have no idea what I'm looking at." We heard the heartbeat, and we're like, I was crying, but she's like, "I don't know. I'm only picking up 1 heartbeat, but I'm seeing 2 heads, and I'm seeing 4 arms and 4 legs." And she's even asking my husband, he's like, "Do you see what I'm seeing?" He's like, "How does he know how to read an ultrasound like a
He's
in the
like, "Yeah,
baby?"
totally."
Like, at 7 weeks, baby's like the size of, gosh, like a little peanut, like not even, so tiny, so tiny at 7 weeks. And we're looking, and we clearly see there's like a couple arms, 4 legs, 2 heads, but it was just 1 heartbeat. So
Hmm.
she literally ran out of the room and got another provider. She's like, "Oh, well, if you maneuver the machine like this, it just looks like 1 baby." So we just got that 1 picture, and it looked like 1 baby, but she said this could be a high risk pregnancy because if there are twins, I'm only seeing 1 sac, 1
Hmm.
gestational sac. So that could be high risk if there's 2 babies in 1 sac. We're like, "All right, whatever. At least baby's alive and there's a heartbeat," and hearing the heartbeat at 7 weeks is just, it changes you as a person. I was always pro-life, but if you weren't and you go in for your first ultrasound, that is life-changing. I mean, hearing your little baby's heartbeat, it's so tiny.
Oh.
So after that, it was just pretty routine. I was going through 7 weeks until 10 weeks, super sick, super nauseous, going through it, and, 10 weeks came along, and I was just hanging out, and I felt really sick, abdominal pain, and I'm like, "This is not normal." And I called triage, and they said, "Take a Tylenol, and if it doesn't go away within a couple of hours, come into the ER." So that's what I did, and it was already like 2 AM by that time, and I went to the ER, and I just was in a lot of pain, and they're like,
Mm.
"Okay, we're gonna do another ultrasound, make sure things are okay." So this time they had my husband not be with me during the ultrasound. So they did an abdominal ultrasound and another ultrasound to check on the baby. I thought I was losing the baby. I thought something was wrong, like really wrong.
Right.
So they did the ultrasound, and she was just silent for 30, 40 minutes. She didn't even let me look at the screen at all. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is really bad." And she's like, "Okay, well, you know what? Hang tight. I'm gonna run and grab your husband." So she runs. Literally, I've never seen a doctor sprint
Oh my
or
gosh.
ultrasound tech. She sprinted out of the room. And she comes back in like 2 seconds with my husband. And she's like, "Okay, well, I brought your husband in here because I want him to take some pictures. And I have something to tell you." And I was like, "Okay." She's like, "You are pregnant with twins." And so she kind of pauses and I look at my husband. I'm like, I started crying. I'm like, "I knew it. I knew this is what was going on." And she was like, "But your twins are very special because they're conjoined and it looks like they're sharing one heart and other organs."
Okay.
And I was like, "What?" So this is 5 AM. This is 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm receiving this news. And I look at my husband and he's still all happy and he didn't know what conjoined twins meant.
Yeah.
And for me, I have a little bit of a medical background. I was just crying and I just let it all I was screaming, like, they literally wheeled me away back into my room in the ER, and I was just screaming. I was crying, like, because I knew how could one heart beat for 2 people? How
Right.
could that be possible? And I had just I knew instinctually as a mother that this is just not possible. So, after that, I had a lot of doctors come in, they admitted me to the hospital. No idea what the abdominal pain was about. No clue. Completely different. They have no idea what it was. So, it was
Unrelated.
really unrelated, and just to get me into the ER at 10 weeks. So and to get this news and so we were at a Christian hospital near our house. The doctors I had so many rounds of doctors come up to me and were like, "So, these are the statistics. This is what can happen. You have thoracopagus conjoined twins, and they share one heart, and they probably will share other organs. You will probably miscarry very soon, and or this pregnancy could continue, and they could be stillborn, or if they do make it a little bit more to term, they could be born alive, but only live minutes, hours,
Mm,
days, sort of thing." But they were really adamant about, "You will probably have a miscarriage. Like, that's probably what's gonna happen, or we can transfer you to another hospital to get an abortion done." Basically, and they never once said the word abortion, but they're like, "We can transfer you to another hospital where you can have a procedure to have this taken care of," is how they masked
that's
it.
so icky to have this
Yeah.
taken care of as if they're not 2 living human beings, your
Right,
babies, as if they're just some sort of statistic.
right.
It's
It was
awful.
it was like a slap in the face to hear that, and so I genuinely, like, looked at my husband and we're like, "What do we do?" Like, we just got the worst news of our life. Our babies are gonna die, and it's like, what do we do? Is what's like, we knew we were pro-life, but my big thing was I don't want them to be in pain or suffering or anything like that, and they're like, "No, they're not suffering, but this is just their condition. This is how they're developing," and I'm like, "Alright." And after they came in and asked me over and over and over, I'm like, "No, like, our decision is no." I can see them on the ultrasound monitor jumping in unison. They're, like,
Mhm.
happy, they're just vibing, they have no idea what's going on with them.
Just chilling.
They're just chilling, and so, after I said no to, like, 3 different doctors, there was a one doctor who's super adamant, like, she kept coming in, and she's like, "Well, if you don't have this taken care of, your life is also all on the line." I'm like, "How? How could my life be at risk now too?" She said it was, if you go ahead and you deliver these babies, it'll most likely be a C-section, and there could be complications during that surgery where we could deliver both babies, but, um, it's just one incision. So if we deliver both babies, there's a chance that your sides could rip open and you could bleed out on the table and pass away. So that stuck with me. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's terrifying."
Yeah.
Like,
How
that's
does
really
that work,
scary.
though? I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah, I she was super vague about it, but it scared me. That scared me. But I'm like, I still can't, I'm not gonna dismember my children. Like, I'm not
Do
gonna
you
kill them.
do you think that was a way for her to kind of scare you into getting an abortion? Do you
Yeah.
think yeah? Do you
Oh,
think that was,
yeah.
like, an actual possibility that you would have died on the table? Or
No, no, looking at it now, I mean, no.
Yeah.
No, that was ridiculous for her to say that.
Oh my gosh. Sometimes they genuinely do scare you into things because, they make more money off of surgeries than they do
Right,
anything
right.
else.
Yeah, no, but so the whole pregnancy after that, I was scared the whole time, just because of that possibility, like, man, so anyways, they did another in-depth ultrasound that next day, and it was already December 12th, so it was Our Lady of Guadalupe. I got the official diagnosis for these girls. Well, we didn't know they were girls yet, but, so they shared a heart, and they shared a liver, they shared a diaphragm, 1 set of bowels, and 1 umbilical cord. So
Okay.
it was a lot of different organs that they shared, but they had their own heads, they had their own arms and legs, so their connection was kinda like from here, from the sternum,
Okay.
clavicle, all the way to, like, the lower abdomen. So it's just
Okay.
like one big baby, but they
Yeah.
had their own extremities and everything, so
It's
it
more to
was
love.
oh, yeah, so it was very interesting to see them develop, and there's like, "This is definitely a high-risk pregnancy, and if the pregnancy continues, we're gonna have to transfer you." So I'm like, "Transfer you to, like, a bigger hospital because
Oh,
we
okay.
cannot we this out of our hands, we do not have the technology for this," or whatever, so I'm like, "Alright." So a few weeks later, I was transferred to a bigger hospital. I was transferred to the University of Michigan, which is a great hospital. I mean, my dad had his cancer treatments there, and I've always was seen there, and, I was I was born there, so it was, like, pretty full circle. I'm like, "Okay, like, I know I'm in good hands." I do believe they do, abortions there as well. That's where they were gonna transfer me,
Mhm.
um, but I knew that they were the top when it comes to, like, medicine, life-saving medicine. So, uh, I was transferred, and they said, the same thing to me. "We can offer you an abortion, we're only gonna ask you this once." I think I was about 16 weeks then. And I'm like, "My answer is the same. I'm gonna continue with the pregnancy." And from that time when I was transferred and got the diagnosis, every single day I woke up with that fear that
Mm.
these babies could miscarry. I woke up every single day like, "This could be it." Like, I might see blood, I might see something, this could be the end of what's going on. So it was devastating. It mentally affected me a lot, and, I prayed a lot. I said, "Lord, I'm your humble servant. You can do with me whatever you want. Like, these are your babies. You can have them back. You can do whatever. As much as I wanted them so much, you can have them back."
It's a powerful
And
prayer.
I remember say it was just me and my husband in the room, and I said that, and he was tearing up at what I was saying, and I said, "Even my life too, even if it's my life that you desire, like, take it, you can have it." I was not prepared for that, but I'm like, "This is what I'm willing to do,"
The Lord giveth
and
and he taketh away.
blessed be the name of the Lord. So it was just that was kinda my motto the whole pregnancy, and just, he's in charge, and I'm clearly not. So, yeah, so I was transferred, and they offered me the abortion. I said no, and then they told me, "Okay, so this is what could happen. We don't see your babies miscarrying. There's no signs of miscarriage right now." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh," like, it was kind of like a little bit of joy. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Wow, okay." And they're like, "We can actually see these babies going all the way until 35 weeks. They could be born alive." And we're like, "Oh my gosh, this is like the best news ever." But they're like, "So it comes down to they're not gonna live very long. That's not gonna change. They cannot be separated. We can't give organs to one baby and one no, like, that's not how that works."
Yeah.
And, and then the C-section. We will most likely have to do a classical up and down C-section instead of the regular transverse bikini cut one. And with the classical up and down one has its own risks for future pregnancies. And
Mm.
I'm like, "Okay, whatever, like, I'll just have to keep going back to this hospital and whatever, you can deal with it." But I was really scared for that classical C-section. That was what I was most scared about. With the classical, you have to keep on having C-sections subsequently afterwards.
Is that because if you conceive again, there's potential to tear
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
or
so
hemorrhage or something?
the biggest, risk with having a classical C-section is placental abruption if you
Okay.
try for a VBAC, I believe, so that's, like, the biggest thing, and all of my babies would have to be born a month early, and via
Oh.
C-section.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, "Okay, there's a lot of information here, a lot going on. These babies are gonna determine future pregnancies. It's gonna determine a lot," which is also why they pushed abortion because 'cause they're like, "Oh, think about your other pregnancies and all these other things." It's like we live in a time of modern medicine, okay? Like, I'm not
Right.
having these babies in the woods. Like, I'm
Exactly.
here in civilization, you know? So I have access to medicine and you can make these babies as comfortable as possible. And I asked them again, are they in any pain? Now that I see them growing and they're like, no, they're not in any pain at all. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Like I'm just gonna keep on being pregnant. And I was still super sick. I was really sick with the girls still. A few times I had to go to the ER just for hydration, fluids, that sort of thing. And I think I had a lot of heart palpitations, but I think it was the anxiety that came with their diagnosis as well.
At this
And
point, how far along are you at this point?
so, yeah, 17 weeks is when
Okay.
I was transferred, I think, like 16 or 17 weeks.
Okay.
And they had made a game plan, and typically, what they told me, this doesn't happen in normal pregnancies. They took me into a conference room and sat me down and told me it was a meeting. It was a meeting about my pregnancy, and they're like, "This doesn't happen in a regular pregnancy, but since it's high risk, we have to go over this." And I said, "Okay." And they wanted to have me have an ultrasound every 2 weeks to
Mm.
check on the progression, to check on growth. And so I'm like, "All right, that's great. Like, we'll just keep on seeing that." The anatomy scan came around 20 weeks. I was pregnant with them, and by this time, we had found out that they were girls and stuff, and it was just really simple in the ultrasound room. "Do you wanna know?" We're like, "Yeah, sure," and, like, they're girls. And
Aw.
we're like, we knew that they were girls, and it's just the same way I knew that they were twins from the very beginning. I just knew.
Mother's intuition.
Mother's intuition is always right. So, we had selected different names for them already, and just because we have other names that were chosen for babies that will be here, and if these babies were gonna die, we wanted special names for these
Mm.
babies, so we chose them very carefully, and, by this time, I think I put my story on Twitter, so that's when it really took off, and a lot of people had different questions for me and different assumptions, and did I
Yeah,
get the COVID vax? Did I, do
I
this
remember
and
all
that?
of that. I was like, "Guys, leave this poor woman alone, like,
No.
jeez."
I'm like, "No, I'm the type of woman to, like, scan, like, all my stuff at the grocery store to make sure there's no, like, additives and stuff, like,
Me too.
I'm like that kind of, I don't know, crunchy almond, whatever you wanna
No
call it.
seed oils, no red dye.
No, no, so
Yeah.
not like that. And, so that's just the kind of people my husband and I are, we take care of ourselves. He goes to the gym, we do all these things and take care of our physical health, spiritual health, that sort of thing. And by this time, I think a lot of Catholic, news outlets in the Detroit area found out about my story and they got a hold of me, and I think that's how it really started to blow up. The Detroit Catholic in Espanol, they're the first ones that contacted me, and then after that, it blew up everywhere. I had interviews with, like, EWTN, National Catholic Register, Live Action. I had another talk with them, and this was all, like, while I was pregnant too. I was on EWTN News Nightly, with my husband. He's not one to be in front of the camera, so he's just like, "You can do it all, that's okay." Um, but yeah, he was a great support. I always would recommend to any young girls listening, you have to pick your spouse and pick the father of your children. Who's gonna be that Saint Joseph, that leader in your home? And, you have to pray about that, and Austin was 100% like a Saint Joseph to me the whole pregnancy.
Mm,
It was wonderful to have his support and him being so level-headed and strong because these were his kids too.
right.
So, he was grieving just as much as I was, but he held firm and he was, yeah, head of the household, and
I
yeah, I
feel like it's
couldn't.
hard for the men too, because they have this
Yeah.
innate desire to protect and
Mhm,
to provide, and when that is taken away from them, not that they can't, but they cannot
mhm.
do anything,
Yeah.
um, I think that takes a toll on men when they cannot do the one thing that they were created to do.
Right, and after hearing that his kids will pass away and there's something going on with the wife now that I could pass away too, it was, like, so much for him to hear. It was overwhelming, and and we were still, 23 now at this point. So we're like, we're
Young.
way in over our heads. Like, I don't know what's going on. But again, just trusting in God the whole time because there was nothing else for us to do. And so, yeah, we just continued on. I celebrated my 24th birthday at the end of March, had routine ultrasounds, and everything was fine, growing well. And so we had a fetal echocardiogram, which was so cool.
What is
Um,
that?
so it's the echocardiograms are ultrasounds of the heart. And so fetal echocardiogram is just an ultrasound over my abdomen, but specifically looking at the baby's heart. And the
Oh.
baby's heart is like the size, it's like the size of a quarter or dime. It's just still so small, but you can see everything, all the details of the heart. So I don't get these pro-choicers when they're like, "Oh, it's not alive yet, it's not this, it's not that," or whatever. And I'm like, I had a fetal echocardiogram. It showed that they had 2 left aortas. One
Mhm.
aorta gave rise to another. It was very strange, their heart and their connections, but it was pumping blood. It was working for them, and it was very strange. It was a very strange heart, and that's all that they could say. So they said from here on out, every time you come in for an ultrasound, we need to check for signs of heart failure. So, because that will be the cause of their fetal demise, is what they called it. So I'm like, all right. So every time I went in and they're like, nope, heart looks good. Everything looks good. And we're like, okay, thank God. This means we're going to prepare for baptism and confirmation and all these things. So that's what we did. And it wasn't until they gave us a delivery date of June 2nd. So I think that time it was the something. It was a feast day of something. I can't remember right now. I have pregnancy brain. I can't
It's
remember.
okay.
Something
June
it's
2nd, isn't that the feast of an the
immaculate
I
some
think.
heart, right?
I think so. I don't know. I'll have to Google wait.
Yeah.
What year was it?
So yeah, they were born 2023.
Okay.
So it was
You
June
can
2nd.
keep talking and I'll Google it.
Yeah, so that's what it was. And we're like, oh great, now we have this like extra, thing to celebrate. And
It's the Feast of Corpus Christi.
really? Okay, yeah, so I knew it was something to do with the heart, and which was super symbolic because 2 humans fused with 1 heart. To me, I thought it
Mhm.
was extremely symbolic, and not to mention how rare these girls were. Any conjoined twins are very, very rare.
What a blessing. I
So it
mean,
was it
to
was
have them,
beautiful. Yeah, even just it was a privilege for me to carry them as long as I did because there was no resources for me. There was nothing for me to and just the people that I did reach out to had different conjoined babies with different organs, different this, or they were able to be separated because they didn't share a heart. There's successful babies that were separated, but they had shared like just the abdomen or something. So
Right.
so yeah, it was a lot. I felt a lot by myself, just me and my husband, and we had no one else. And every time I would look on Google, like, oh, conjoined twins at 18 weeks, it was just a bunch of aborted conjoined twins. And I would just start to cry. And it's like, why? Why? And immediately people hear conjoined. And yes, it most likely is a death sentence, but there's the other half that can be separated, that are separate and live normal lives. So
Yeah.
oh, that drives me crazy. But it was around May 12th. It was a Friday, I believe. And we went in for a regular routine ultrasound. And it was a doctor who did our ultrasound. She was like, we need to move up the date for the C-section right away. And we're like, what? And like their heart is starting to fail and their umbilical cord isn't working as well, providing the nutrients or whatnot, and the blood supply is starting to fail now. So we need to deliver them now on Tuesday. So we're like, okay. So we were not prepared at all. We're like, okay. We just so it was a Friday and we heard the news. It was like 4 o'clock when we got discharged from the hospital. And so everything was closed. Everything that we needed to do, like contact the cemetery and the funeral home and like all these things. So we had to wait until Monday. So that Sunday was Mother's Day. And I was so happy I was pregnant with the girls on Mother's Day. It was the only one I had with them. And so it was really, really special. And, so yeah, Monday came around, and that was the last Sunday. Like, so I went to church that Sunday thinking this could be the last time I go to
Mm.
mass ever. Like, I don't know. So I'm like just putting all my trust in God, receiving communion like if it were my last time. I had went to confession on Monday and told father, you know, there's a chance that I could die. I don't really know how much of a chance, but it's always a possibility. And so I had a really good confession, and I went to the funeral home, and they walk in. I walk in and the director was like, "How can we help you?" I'm like, "Yeah, I need to plan a visitation for my babies." And he like looks at me in my belly and he's like, "And what's going on?" And I told him I have conjoined twins, and he's like, "What's that?" So a lot of people had no
So
idea.
crazy that people don't know what that
I had
is.
no idea.
Like, adults.
He had no idea what I was talking about, and he's like, "Well,
Wow.
we've never had a." So he was like, "So you don't need 2 caskets?" And we're like, "No, just 1." And he was like, "Okay." And, we had also had our story reached, these 2 ladies on the west side of Michigan, and they had volunteered to make a baptism gown for the girls, like, custom made for them.
It's beautiful.
And I'd never met them before, but they were so touched by my story and what I was going through. They had made this because my aunt lives in Grand Rapids, so she was able to bring us the gown, and I cried when I saw it. It was so beautiful, and it fit them perfectly. I don't know how they made it. I have no idea how, because it was really complicated, but it was custom made just for them. And so we had this little outfit for them ready to go. Funeral home was done. I called the cemetery. That was all taken care of. And everything was done. And I just had to get ready for the next day and had a really long talk with my husband. And we had a business like, okay, this is everything about the business, this is what's going to happen. We need to put the business on hold for a couple of weeks or something. And it was that's our only source of income. So
Right.
it was a lot going through what we went through. And oh my gosh, I think I got phone calls even the same day that I delivered the girls, but I
Yeah.
couldn't. Gosh, it was crazy. So the day came, it was May 16th, and I went in at 11 to the hospital. They got me ready. By 1 o'clock, the C-section started, and they had done an ultrasound prior, and they're like, we're going to have to do the classical C-section because of the way that they're positioned. And I'm like, oh, crap. Okay, that's fine. So, and we had a priest ready there. So Father David Pelican, he was present in the OR, and I said, "I need my husband in the OR." They're like, "Okay, great." I'm like, "I also have a photographer. She's gonna be there." They're like, "Okay." And I'm like, "I need my mom." And they're like, "Okay, she can be in there too." So it was packed. The
Wow,
OR was
that's awesome that they
packed.
let you guys do that, though. That's amazing.
It was wonderful, and even father had asked me, when I had the confession the last time, and he's like, "So, do I need to be in the OR?" And I'm like, "Yeah, father, they're not gonna make it." Like, and they were born at 32 weeks, not 35 weeks like we had hoped.
Right.
And I got a phone call from the hospital the day before saying, "You need to be prepared. They will most likely live 1 hour. Just so you're prepared." And I was just crying. I was just bawling because 'cause I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is gonna happen, like, this is happening very soon." And, yeah, that was what else could I do? And so yeah, they were born at around 2 o'clock just because they had such a hard time trying to maneuver. I felt the tugging and the pulling, and I think they were born, like, with their legs first, and so it was just a lot of maneuvering. Okay, look at A's head and A's shoulder or B's shoulder, and so it was really uncomfortable. I felt all the pressure, but I wasn't in any pain, and neither
That's
were the
good.
girls. So, I was really nervous and I was really shaky, and they're like, "We can give you something for anxiety, but you're probably not gonna remember any of this." And I'm like, "No, like, I don't care. I need to remember their lives. I don't wanna miss out on their whole life."
Right.
And they were born, and Maria Therese, she was baby A. She let out a really big cry, which I was like I asked it like, I said something to the doctor, I'm like, "Was that a baby?" She's like, "Yes, it was." And I was not expecting at 8 weeks early, at 32 weeks, being conjoined, to even let out any sort of cry.
Right.
It was really loud. Then it
She
was the
was
most
there.
she
She
was
wanted
like,
to let
"I'm
you know.
here." Her eyes were open the whole time, and she was, like, fussy, and I
Oh.
was just so excited, to see them, and Rachel Clare was born, and she was just kinda chill the whole time, and her sister's, like, being crazy, and it was just so beautiful to see 2 different personalities of my babies, and one just like me, one just like Austin, and they were identical, but they looked, like, a little bit different from each other too, so I could see everything. It was just beautiful to see them, and they were immediately baptized as soon as they were born. They put them right on my chest, and father baptized Maria Therese and Rachel Clare, in Latin, and the confirmation in Latin as well.
Beautiful.
And so it was perfect. I held them for a while until all the medicine caught up to me and I got really sick. So I'm like, "Austin, you can hold them." My mom held them, and I was sick for a while, and, um, they kept checking their heart for a heartbeat, and they're like, "They're still here, but it's starting to get a little bit
Mm.
quiet." I'm like, "Okay, okay." And, that was one of my biggest fears is if I were to ask and they were to tell me they were to pass away, I don't know how I would react, especially being exposed on the table. I thought that's what was going to kill me, basically, was just
Right.
hearing that my kids are dead. And so I had asked them like 45 minutes later after that. I'm like, "Is there a heartbeat?" And she's like, "No, sweetie, there's not." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Can I have them back now?" And they're like, "Sure." And I guess it was just all the medicine and everything, but Austin held them as they took their last breath, and he just was holding them, and he's like, "It's okay. You can go be with Jesus and Mary and Joseph now, and you can go. It's okay. We're gonna be okay." And so he told me they breathed in together and then exhaled one last time
Mm.
together in unison. I'm like, "Oh, that's so beautiful." So they handed me back to them, and I hadn't even noticed that I had my dead babies on me. I was just like, "Oh, babies." Like, I was just, like, having them close to me and having that familiar weight. They were 7 pounds, 2 ounces combined, so
Oh,
they
wow.
were big babies.
Yeah.
And, so it was beautiful. They took me to the post-op, and I had my sisters there, my cousin and her husband, and they were just excited, like, "Oh, babies." And I'm like the only thing I could say was, "They're with Jesus now."
Right.
And they just knelt beside my bed because they knew that they were in the presence of saints. They
Yeah.
were perfect, and so they were like, "This is the room where, like, heaven and earth are meeting together." They were just my youngest sister, she was 17 at the time, and she was like, "This changed her life." Everyone in my family's lives for sure, and, it was just, wonderful to have the days with them. I was in the hospital, and I was just holding them. They had a little cooling cot, so I'd put them on their little cooling cot, and I would sleep, and during the day, I would just hold them, and leaving that hospital with just 2 boxes, 2 memorial boxes, and I had massive surgery. I had a the most difficult C-section to deliver, and
That's
it's
a lot.
it was a lot, and I'm gonna recover through this surgery, but what about my babies? What am I gonna I need my babies, and there's nothing I could do except see them again in a couple weeks for the visitation, and I was crying again like a crazy lady leaving the hospital, and all I had were these 2 boxes, and there was another lady leaving the hospital. She had all these baby balloons, and she held her baby, and it was hard not to compare myself to others or feel pity for myself, but it took time to
Right.
adjust to that.
What were the days following like immediately after through the emotions and
It was
everything?
it was a lot. I remember as soon as I got back to my mom's, I think I took a shower or something. She helped me, and it was really painful emotionally, physically. I remember crying the whole time. As soon as I stepped foot in my mom's house, I was just crying. We didn't have a home yet, so I was just really, really emotional. I think they tried to put on a movie, and I was just not there. I was just, like, looking out the window, like, I was not it was hard, like, for the first couple of weeks, But one thing that I had decided to do was donate and pump my breast milk so I
Oh,
could donate
beautiful.
to other babies as well. So that is what occupied me a lot of the time, and I felt really happy doing it, and I did that for 6 months.
When you started healing and, being able to, think about having kids again, was there a barrier there? Was there any kind of uncertainty? How did you overcome that?
Yeah, so I had that first follow-up appointment, what was it, 4 or 6 weeks after the girls were born, and we had already had the funeral and visitation for them, and the doctor was like, "Okay, so since we had the classical C-section on you, you have to wait 1 to 2 years to start trying to conceive again." And I'm like, "Okay, that's fine because you had massive surgery and you're gonna need to have another C-section." So I said, "Okay, that's fine. And this year, I'm going to try to recover physically, recover mentally, emotionally, everything." I can't believe I was still alive. And just, I was praising God for that. But I really was just living day to day. And once we got to like January time, we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's going to be a year since their birthday. And then May came and we celebrated their first birthday in heaven. And
So sweet.
it was so beautiful, but I couldn't even sing happy birthday because I was just crying the whole time. And, we were like, "Let's just." I asked the doctor because we had a preconception appointment. I told her, "I really think that I'm healed well enough to start trying again." And she's like, "Okay, like, yeah, you're young enough, your incision healed great, everything looks good. I don't see why not?" And so we kind of prepared ourselves, because it took us 10 months to conceive the girls. I'm like, "Okay, so I'm probably thinking the same thing," and I looked up statistics. It's harder to conceive. There's like a 20% chance that it's gonna be pretty difficult to conceive after having a classical C-section. So I'm
Oh,
like, "Oh,
wow.
let's just leave it in God's hands and see what happens." So I had went to, Belgium and France in from May, right after the girl's first birthday, for my cousin's confirmation. He lives over in Belgium. So we were there with my sister and my grandparents for 2 to 3 weeks, and Austin was left behind here. We got our first home that winter, so we're like, "Thank God." And as soon as I came back from my trip, I had a talk in Chicago at the Rockford Walk for Life,
Yeah.
and so that
Yeah.
went really well. We're like, "Okay," like, I have these, and over the months of the girls passing, I had a lot of talks. People wanted me to share my testimony, and going back to Chicago in a couple weeks actually for another talk. So I'm
I'm
really
there.
excited. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's right. So I'm like, "That's really awesome. I'm gonna go back to Chicago and just give my talks." And the following week, I have a talk, November 8th in the seminary here in Detroit.
Oh,
So
amazing.
sharing the same, testimony. And so I got back from my trip, got back from Chicago, and I got pregnant at the same time. Like, oh my gosh, we were just so happy. We were in shock because we were not expecting it to be so fast. And so I saw I was pregnant again. I'm like, "No way." And then all the thoughts of the pregnancy kinda rushed my head, but I had been praying a lot. I had done the St. Gianna novena, like, and that was the only time, like, I'm really good about starting novenas. I'm really bad about finishing them.
I'm there. I
So
feel
I feel like that's my motto when it comes to novenas, but that's the first one I, like, completed all the way through, like, for sure, because I so had desperately wanted to start our earthly family. And so I saw that I was pregnant and I felt really positive. So that was a really good thing. I didn't My mom kept asking me, "How are you feeling? How are you feeling? How are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm doing good. Like, everything seems to be going fine." Then the morning sickness came this time around, and it was still pretty bad, but, it wasn't as bad as with the girls, but still rough. And then I started to get to the point where it started going away earlier than when I had it at, like,
okay.
10, 11 weeks. It started going away, but I was still kinda sick, but I could start functioning a little bit more, and I got nervous because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, no, something's wrong," and I couldn't feel movement yet. So I still am considered high risk this time around because of the prior C-section.
Okay.
Um, but I'm not. monitored as closely. Just I think every 4 weeks is when they want me to come in for ultrasound. So we got that first seeing the our rainbow baby for the first time and on the screen. And we're like, there's a heartbeat and everything looks good. It's one baby. And I was just so happy. And yeah, we have our anatomy scan next week. I'm 18 weeks today. Yeah.
That's so exciting. Wow.
Yeah.
So you guys don't know if it's a boy or a girl yet then, right?
Not yet. We're gonna the anatomy scan, we'll find out next week. I didn't wanna be f I wanted it to be a surprise. My husband wants to be prepared, so I'm like, "Okay, you win, whatever." I'm
Be
just
like, "But don't
excited.
tell me."
Well, also because the last time with the girls, I didn't get to have a gender reveal party. I didn't get to have
True.
a baby shower. I didn't have anything, to because I knew they weren't gonna be here, and I still celebrated the girls while they were here and afterwards, and it was just I wanted to have this pregnancy a lot different this time
Mhm.
around, and if I'm able to have a gender reveal party, okay, I guess another reason to celebrate and something I didn't get to do with the girls, so we'll find out at the party, it's just a couple days after.
That's gonna be so exciting. I'm so happy
It
for you
is,
guys.
yeah.
And I mean, what a blessing to have 2 saints in your family. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
that is so incredible to think about. People don't usually think about that, but it's so incredible to think about, you know?
It is, and I have a really strong feeling, I could be wrong, but I have a feeling this is a boy. So
Okay.
I keep talking to him and I'm like, "You know, you have your 2 saints, your sisters in heaven. They prayed so much for you because we asked, especially for their intercession of your older sisters for you to happen." And I'm like, "Imagine if you become a priest." I'm like, "I know you can hear me right now." It's like, imagine you
Yeah,
could be a priest and you can say you have 2 sisters that are saints in heaven. I mean, I feel like
that's beautiful.
I could die a happy camper as a mom, like, that's all you want is just to get your kids to heaven, and, I'm trying the best I can. I have a lot of flaws and a lot of things I still need to work on, but I'm just incredibly blessed that this is what God wanted from me, even if it meant giving him my children, like, the biggest thing that he could really ask. I mean, he asked his own son to die for our sins and to give up his own life for us, so I was ready to do that for the girls. I'm ready to do it again if I have to, because that's just what a mother does. That's what you do for your children, and every baby deserves a chance at life, especially those with the fetal abnormalities. That's, like,
Mm.
my biggest thing that I'm going through right now.
Every child deserves to have a chance to find what happiness is to them, even if it's for an hour or even if they breathe one breath. It's like
Mhm.
that to know that they were loved, to rest on their mother's chest, to just
Yeah.
know that they were wanted and that they impacted lives. I mean, you said it changed your sister's life. I mean, how many conversions are gonna happen because of your little
So
girls, you
many.
know?
I even someone on Twitter, they had commented, they're like, "You know, I was okay with abortions in the case where, babies have a fetal abnormality, but after hearing about your story, I am completely, like, 100% pro-life, no exceptions." So that I
That's
was just
amazing.
so happy hearing that, and just a lot of other people like, moms would tell me, "My kid has a really bad fever." I asked the intercession of your little saints to help, and their fever broke immediately. So
That's
even just
amazing.
hearing that, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is this is a big deal. This is a huge deal." And another story was, this mom, she had gone in for an abortion. She took the chemical pills, and, then this other mom, it was a social worker or something, went up to her and was like, you know, look at this mom. She had conjoined twins and she decided to have these kids. And, you know, you could do the same. I think her reason was she had like 5 kids already. She couldn't financially afford it. And so she shared my story with this mom who had already taken the abortion pills. And I think she took the reversal pill or something. And she was just praying to God that her baby could be saved. Like she wasn't sure what would happen. And the baby was born completely healthy and normal
Mm.
after, like, she had repented and she had, like, this huge conversion after hearing our story, so I was just crying and crying and crying, like, "Thank God." If I was able to save one baby, then what I went through was all worth it, completely
Yes.
100%.
And yet they're saving I mean, they're working hard up there.
Working so hard. We were just talking about that the other day. It's like, what are they doing up there?
They're working miracles because truly, like, children's prayers are so powerful, and
Yep.
to be completely, perfect and to go see the creator and be in the beatific vision. I mean, that is what we all dream of, and for them to be able to experience that, so young, it's beautiful. In in your experience, while we kind of just wrap this up, it's a beautiful testimony. I was tearing up too. Um, what would you say helped you the most, or how did people help you through those difficult moments? Was there anything specific you feel like you wish people knew, or that you could talk to about people who know someone who might have gone through something?
Yeah, I'm just the sense of community, even the pro-life community. I told them I'm not gonna have a baby shower, but there's a chance that they could live for a few days, a week. And they had put together like a little Amazon registry with just a few things, and then they sent it to me. So even that support was just incredible to me, complete strangers. I was accepting donations on my company's page because we had no idea how long, if these girls did survive a few days, we had no idea how we could do the business and take care of these babies that have really complex problems with them. And I would need to be in the NICU. Like, I was prepared for all this. And random people had donated to help us because the hospital's like an hour away. So going back and forth so often every couple of weeks, it was a lot on us. And, so just having that community that was there, and especially seeing the pro-life community really at work, and just people saying that they prayed for me gave me so much strength. People were doing rosaries, novenas, all these prayer chains. People had given me, a a spiritual bouquet. So even things like that, knowing that I wasn't alone, and I'm still not, alone. People still reach out to me even today, and it's just so beautiful to that people remember our kids and ask me how I'm doing, and I appreciate you and I remember you because
Yeah.
that means a lot to me.
I think it's sometimes just the simple things. Some people are like, "Oh, well, what should I do? Like, should I get them all these things? Should I?" And it's like, no, simplicity and knowing that you truly care is the best.
Yeah, and especially having masses offer, like, people offered masses for me, and I'm like, "That is, like, the best gift," or even including me in one rosary, like, that's just it's enough for me to go on and to continue after everything I went through. And yeah, I thank God for my husband, my family being close by, and my whole family was completely supportive of everything I was doing, and those that weren't, I hope that my story touched their lives in some way, and able to see me now on the other side a year and a few months later, that life goes on. I know the girls would want me to be happy, and that there's still a lot of work for me to do, especially in the state of Michigan. There's a lot of pro-life work to be done
Oh,
here.
yeah. I mean, I live in Illinois. I live in Chicago.
Oh,
We're in the same boat.
yeah, it's rough. It's so rough,
Yeah.
and people try to use, especially like my babies, the fetal abnormalities as an excuse for their atrocities.
Disgusting.
So I'm like, don't use my girls as an excuse. And I deal with a lot of negative comments even now. Oh, you made your baby suffer and you did this and that. And I'm like, I did not tear them apart limb by limb in the womb, and they can feel pain at that point, and they were held in love their whole lives, and that's what everyone wants in their life, is to be loved.
Yeah. And it's so true. And, being able to share that experience with others, like we said, it's gonna create conversions. It's gonna make people realize the beauty of life. Like,
Mhm.
the hardest stories are the ones that God turns into the most beautiful stories,
Yeah,
truly.
yeah.
But I really do appreciate you coming on here, Nicole, and telling us about them because they're just beautiful. And, Maria, Therese, and Rachel Clare pray for us.
Yes, yes, they will. They most certainly, because I tell them to, so they will.
She's like, "Mom said."
There was some quote, I forget by which, it was a beatified someone, but he's like, your children are still obligated to listen to your prayers because you are their mom, like, forever. I'm like, I love that. I love that so much. So
That's
I
so
know they're listening.
so accurate. They're just like, "Well, mom said, so we have to," and it's like,
Yep.
"All right then." No, I
Yeah,
love
I
it.
love it.
Where can my listeners find you?
So I'm on Twitter X. My username is Nicolita_D, NICOLITA_D, and that's the same for Instagram as well. I try to put like little informational videos about infant loss and ways to help moms, and I just talk about my life as just a normal 25-year-old business owner dealing with my life, I guess.
No, I totally know what you mean. I mean, it's a lot, but yeah, I think people will really, first of all, resonate with your story, whether they've experienced this or not, just knowing the beauty of it.
Mhm.
And, I think it's important to get the word out about I know you've already been on EWTN and stuff, but there's so many people that still need to hear this story. So
Yeah.
please keep doing talks and sharing about your girls because they are going to work miracles and they have
I will,
already.
yeah. They're the ones that are at work, and they're just saying, "You can share the story," and I'm more than happy to do it.
No, it's beautiful. And thank you so much again, Nicole, for coming on here and telling us about your story. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. And with all that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. You learned something. Remember to follow Nicole LeBlanc on Twitter and Instagram, and I will talk to you guys in the next podcast. Bye.